You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, ep004. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
Welcome to episode number 4 of the Tricorder Transmissions, The Naked Time. We are your hosts, Jeff Hewlett.
And Craig Cohen.
All right, Mr. Cohen. I have a couple of Star Trek-related news bits we can talk about. Are you ready for those?
Oh, yeah. You know what? This is awesome. I mean, to have Star Trek be in the news for us every week right before we're getting ready to do a show.
Yeah, so I'm kind of trying to siphon down some of the news into just TOS-related news, but there seems to be news about some of the characters, some of the newer shows or newer movies, but I try to strip it down to just the ones that may be relatable to what we're talking about. So first big piece of news it looks like this week is on November 19th of this year, the season 5 of The Next Generation hits Blu-ray, and the reason why that's kind of tied back is that's the season that features the Unification double episode with Nimoy reprising his role as Spock.
Okay, cool.
So if you haven't seen that, that'll be available on Blu-ray. It's a pretty interesting episode. So you see what Spock has been up to after his time on the Enterprise, where he's been going. He's an ambassador, so he's out there doing things politically. So it's interesting.
On the series, not the movies, but on the series, McCoy also showed up on The Next Generation, and did Scotty show up, or was he just in the movie?
Yeah, no, Scotty showed up. He showed up on an episode, McCoy and and I think Spock, but I don't think anybody else did. I think that was it. Yeah. So that's good if you're a TNG person, or if you're a TOS person and you want some more of the old characters showing up again. That's a good one. And this is kind of a cool one. George Takei is to be the Grand Marshal at the Cincinnati Oktoberfest in Ohio on September 30th.
Oh, wow. That should be a lot of fun for
I
people
thought that was
over in Ohio.
Cool. Yeah, I was a little jealous. Like, that would be something pretty cool to go to.
Yeah, it's probably going to be something like, oh, my, are you all ready for the Oktoberfest?
Hey, you do a pretty good Takei there, man. I'm impressed.
I got to base it up a little bit more, but
that was good.
You know, he sort of developed a unique voice in the last decade or so that is a little bit easier to capture than when he was on the original series.
Oh yeah, he certainly did. I've heard him on the Howard Stern show several times, and he's fully into that voice that he does now. So that was a pretty good one, though.
Thank you.
All right, I'm very impressed with your impersonation skills. So, what else do we have this week?
Oh, well, this past weekend, we were both at Monster Mania in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Yes, we were.
And among other people, we met separately Malcolm McDowell, who we all know and love or hate from Star Trek Generations as Sauron, who is responsible for the death of Captain Kirk.
He is responsible. I have my picture with him. I didn't ask him about it, but I did get an autograph signed by him over the one of the screen grab of him and Shatner facing off in their final scuffle there and near the end of the movie. So I'm not sure what image did you pick?
I got a more generic shot of his character, just sort of a headshot of his character, but It was a grab from the movie. Nice. And he did sign it. And I actually did ask him about the movie. A majority of the climax of that movie takes place in a very desert-like environment.
It does.
And I asked him, what it was like to film out in those elements. And he basically said, it's a beautiful, beautiful place to experience and to film in, but it would not be a place where he'd want to live.
Yeah, I can see that.
I
can see that. Mm-hmm. So, funny thing, after meeting up with him there and, thinking back on Generations, I didn't go back and watch the movie again. I haven't watched it in a while, but I did go online and look up some of the alternate takes on Kirk's death.
Oh wow!
And there are a couple other ones out there. Getting shot in the back, stuff like that. But,
well, that was the original one, and then from what I remember, they showed that to a test audience, and there was a damn near riot.
Yeah, well, I think that's the reaction that I think the riot reaction might have been a better reaction than the reaction when he fell, on that piece of metal scrap and kind of just. Yeah, it just seemed
I remember seeing Generations in theaters opening night, and
me too.
I want to say that I knew that Kirk was going to die. I don't remember if at the time in the press they were sort of advertising that.
I think they did.
Yeah, because it was something that I was definitely prepared for.
Me too.
And I remember, being satisfied with the way it was presented in the final version of the film.
Really?
I mean, not that you ever want to see Captain Kirk die, but he died doing something heroic. He died saving the day. And I think the Kirk character carried a lot of weight in that movie, where he spends a lot of time, Sauron, sort of not being afraid of Picard. And then you get that shot of Kirk's boot coming down. And what does Sauron do but turn around and run?
Yeah, that's true. But I will say one thing. During my search for these alternate deaths, I did come across an interview with McDowell, who actually says that he felt that Kirk deserved a better, more prolific death than the one he got. So,
but it's weird because they were in a tough spot. It was the Next Generation movie. They were sort of bridging the gap between the original series and sort of passing the the baton over to the Next Generation cast. It had to be handled in a way where you don't make it all about Kirk, which is very tough to do. So I think they had a definite balance there. They sort of had to keep. And
maybe.
I'm anxious to talk about that movie with you eventually. If and when we ever get to it. I mean, we have a lot of stuff to talk about before then.
Yeah.
But I mean, ideally, we'll be doing this podcast for months or years to come, and we will get to a point where we talk about Generations.
We certainly will.
I'm sure we'll have a full length episode discussion of that at some point.
Yep. We definitely will. So I'll save the rest of my comments until then.
So this week we're talking about The Naked Time, though.
Yes, sir.
And I guess you have some of the air date information.
Yeah, so the original episode aired on September 29th of 1966, and the remaster, which we are watching, aired on September 30th of 2006.
That would make it almost 40 years to the day since its original air date.
Great stuff. So do we have the plot synopsis?
Yeah, I'll give you a real high-level one. The Enterprise crew is intoxicated by an inhibition-stripping contagion, which causes mayhem throughout the ship. And we do get a lot of mayhem in this. We get Sulu with a sword, shirtless, and we get some really, really great Kirk stuff. So it's going to be a fun episode to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. And the iconic image of Sulu with the rapier that's a still in a lot of the end credit sequences on these episodes. This is the iconic image of Sulu, the shirtless, shiny Sulu that we see all the time. So, and George Takei himself loves that little bit he got out of this episode.
Yeah, we're going to share a little bit of his thoughts on this episode when we get to some of those scenes.
All right. So are we ready to get started with the episode? Or
sure.
Do you have anything else to talk about?
No, count us down.
All right. And we will start the episode in 3, 2, and 1. All right. Welcome. So a couple of interesting things before we get started with this episode. One really interesting fact about this episode is that this is the only episode in the entire series that all 3 recurring female characters appear together.
Oh, wow. So
you have Uhura, Nurse Chapel, and Yeoman Rand.
Yeah, wow.
This is the only episode until Star Trek The Motion Picture. They never appear in the same episode, all 3 of them again.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
So, yeah, very, very cool fact about this one. I thought that was very... I never even realized it until I watched this earlier to prepare myself for this. And also, another thing to watch out for in this episode is crewman Riley mentions that the Enterprise has a bowling alley on it. We never see the bowling alley, but he mentions the fact that there's a bowling alley on the Enterprise. So among some of the other mysterious areas of the Enterprise that you never see, like supposedly Scotty has an office somewhere, but you never see that either. So we see some interesting away suits they're wearing, environmental suits that they're wearing here.
Yeah, they're on this
frozen mannequin.
Yes.
I'll bet you early on when this show was first broadcast that you couldn't tell that was a mannequin. But sure. Here on the Blu-ray that we're watching,
a strangled mannequin.
Yeah, you can easily see.
Yeah, it's interesting that they are in some kind of protective gear. I'd say on a majority of the episodes when they beam down, they're beaming down in their uniforms without any kind of layer of protection.
Yeah, and here's another thing. This is how many countless movies and TV shows I've seen this happen in. Some idiot who's wearing protective outfit takes a part of it off and all hell breaks loose. Yeah. So here you guys got an itchy nose and off comes the glove. He's not wearing a protective environmental suit for any particular reason, and he's going to scratch his nose. And he's not going to he's going to leave his glove off.
Yeah.
He's going to leave his glove off, and here we're going to see him get infected with this red goop.
Yeah, there it comes. They're doing some kind of reverse photography, and boom.
And there it is.
There you go.
And the rage virus is transmitted. Yep. And it absorbs right into his skin quickly. He smells his hand.
Gets a nice whiff of it.
Puts the glove back on and pretends like it didn't happen.
Sure. I mean, that's a natural human response.
Oh, sure.
If it was made in the 80s, you could almost say that it was kind of a metaphor for the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah. So they're trying to figure out here what caused this planet to freeze over and everybody to die. And roll the intro.
Yeah, we get a nice little stinger before the intro.
Yeah, so the stinger that we got it's not revealed exactly what happened yet, but we're going to find out that this is the first Star Trek episode to deal with a mass viral outbreak. Mm-hmm. So that's our central theme for this episode. And there's some other little sidebars that are going to come up about this that we'll hit as they happen. Mm-hmm. But the virus, this episode is kind of a popular one because of what the virus seems to do to people. As we'll see as the episode wears on, it affects people in different ways. So you're depending on who you are and what your personality is, you have some very interesting effects from this virus.
Mm-hmm. And it was also an episode that sort of spawned a sequel. There was a Next Generation sequel.
Yep, The Naked Now, I believe it was called. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So anytime that happens in this series, the original episode instantly becomes sort of important.
Yeah, absolutely. So the planet, again, here we see another situation where they're orbiting a planet that's not really given any sort of specific name. It's just PSI 2000. Mm-hmm. It's not a Rigel. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just a letter distinction and a number. What that number means, I've always wondered that. It means 2000. Seems like an awful lot of planets if that's the 2000th planet.
And look at the transporter doing double duty here. It is
as a decontamination unit. So that doesn't happen often either.
Mm-hmm. And now look at the bridge here. We've sort of got, Scotty in his rightful place in a red shirt.
Yep.
You've got Sulu at the helm. In my opinion, if this is the first episode of the series, or this could be a good first episode of the series. Let me restate that.
Yeah, it could be because you got introductions to all of the characters. Yeah. All the females are here.
There's McCoy,
and you got Dr. McCoy,
who disappeared for an episode and is now back.
Spock's pulse is 242, and his blood pressure is non-existent. So,
but he is a Vulcan.
His physiology is quite different. And McCoy is pointing out his green blood, as he'll do many more times.
Yeah, and there is the Spock visually that we pretty much have gone on to know in the past 50 years.
Yeah, I like that all black outfit that Spock's got on too. It's interesting if you see the 2009 Star Trek reboot film, you see that Kirk wears a black outfit like that for most of the movie, actually. Yeah. So he's not actually an official crew member, but he's in this all black outfit. So I wonder if that was a throwback to these sort of informal undergarments that these guys were wearing underneath their shirts.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, knowing that the writers on that project were pretty big Trek fans.
Yeah. So we're seeing some early effects here of this virus and how it's affecting. Here's Nurse Chapel.
Yes, Majel Barrett making her her first official appearance after appearing as number 1 in the unaired pilot.
So the telltale itching we'll see.
Yeah, and there's Rand.
There's Yeoman Rand. They're going to review some record tapes of the frozen people down here.
Really cool visual. I mean,
for the time, the effect is really nice.
The person hunched over the desk there, it almost has sort of like an alien like effect, like in Alien when they go down to that planet and they see what is now referred to as the engineer, sort of at that's melted into that station, and that sort of visually reminds me of sort of the atmosphere they created in Alien.
Yeah, and you wonder how much this show influenced all of the other sci-fi that we've seen after this, because you see elements like that of things that you're seeing here in Star Trek. So,
yeah,
it's always kind of cool for me to watch sci-fi movies and shows,
pre Star Trek and post Star Trek,
pre and post, and see. Star Trek really was the first science fiction program to take itself seriously.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It sort of bridged the gap between what was going on in literature, because there was a lot of really, really good sci-fi written in the 50s and 60s. And Hollywood, like you said, was sort of dabbling in the campy side of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Lost in Space.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah. So I think that's a large part of Star Trek's lasting appeal and lasting success is the fact that it takes itself seriously. Mm-hmm. The characters take themselves seriously. You're dealing with serious issues. Mm-hmm. It doesn't break down into camp, with the exception of a couple of episodes where you see things and you kind of groan.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that's why this entire series, not just the original series, but anything branded Star Trek, sort of attracted the audience that it did.
Yeah.
Because it didn't insult the audience, and it sort of, brought these themes to sort of a popular light in terms of, presenting smart science fiction, on primetime TV.
Yeah.
And here we go. He's got his it almost looks like room service.
And here's Sulu. They're talking about
fencing.
Fencing.
Yeah, the athletic benefits of or the physical benefits of fencing.
And it's something that Sulu carried over into the reboot films.
Yes,
that he is a fencer.
Yeah.
So and look, now they're talking about how last week the subject was his hobby was botany, and now it's fencing. Mm-hmm.
There is an interesting little sort of George Takei Sulu fencing tidbit here. The writer approached George Takei and asked him if he had any experience fencing, and being the eager actor he was, he said, "Yes, I can totally handle that." Having never picked up a sword before, so he had to rush on over to the Falcon Studios in Hollywood for lessons to prep for this episode.
I also heard that they had asked him to take his shirt off so they could see what he looked like, and he was so into the idea of this episode that he was doing push-ups off screen. To pump himself up and to shape his chest a bit.
Yeah. So now we get this really, really interesting speech from Tormelin, who is sort of questioning if man belongs in space. And you know what? He kind of makes a interesting argument.
Does. He really does. Because, if you think about it, how many situations this crew gets into over their 5-year mission,
Mm-hmm.
If they'd have thought about this stuff ahead of time, maybe they'd have been a little more careful.
Mm-hmm.
Luck has saved them many times.
Yeah.
But Tourmaline's talking about, hey, it's not, space isn't ours.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they have the Prime Directive, I suppose.
Yeah.
And we have a little Harry Carey moment here.
Yeah,
But he's going to kill himself with a butter knife.
Yeah.
Yeah. That might not be a really great way to go.
Yeah, I'd imagine there are definitely better ways to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
So
That's
Riley grabs his hand and Sulu
now
comes in.
That's how they're going to get their infections. But, it's never really clear how it's transmitted because later on, we'll see a situation where we would think it would get transmitted, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
So and now we see that he stabbed himself and, yeah.
Calling for the medics.
And now the
Riley's already
he's
noticed.
already got it.
Yeah.
The itchy hands. The itchy hands.
I'll tell you, I've been there before. When you have an itch, man,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how much you scratch it, man, is that annoying.
It is, isn't it? So if you think, this kind of reminds me, this virus and the way that it affects people kind of almost reminds you a little bit of 28 Days Later. But they turn into angry, not zombies who are out to bite each other, rip you apart, but it does kind of make them a little bit mad.
Yeah, I think it also it ties into your personality because we'll see later on when Riley starts showing the effects of it, he gets kind of like happy-go-lucky with it.
Yeah, his little singing across the... but Sulu gets a little bit homicidal.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Spock gets a little bit reflective.
He turns way inward. So I guess now's as good a time as any to sort of go over the behind-the-scenes people on this episode. And this is an interesting episode in the sense that it was written by one of the associate producers of the first 10 episodes, John D.F. Black.
Nice.
He also wrote for Mary Tyler Moore Show, Hawaii Five-0, The Fugitive, Mission Impossible, Mannix, and Charlie's Angels. Wow. And he also co-wrote the film version of Shaft in 1971.
Hey.
And he also had story involvement on the Next Generation sequel, quote-unquote sequel to this episode. It was directed by Mark Daniels, who also directed The Man Trap. He died in 1989.
Wow.
So now, speaking of death...
interesting facts.
McCoy is... they're sort of doing, again, sort of primitive medical procedures.
Yeah, it's hit and miss. But you don't really... They're wearing gloves and plastic sleeves in this one, and that's something that you really don't see.
Yeah. That's the only thing that sort of holds this episode back from really fitting in with the rest of the series. Or the established series.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
You got a respirator here.
Yeah, it seems like you're getting a transition from... it says disposable on it, too, nonetheless. You're seeing a transition from what... a little bit of carryover from what medicine might have looked like in the 60s when this was written, and what they thought medicine should look like. Is that a blowtorch?
Yeah, I know.
What it should look like later on in the future, right?
Yeah.
That looked a hell of a lot like a blowtorch to me. Apparently it was not, but...
And there's Riley itching and itching and itching,
Yeah,
man.
Sulu was itching a little before there, too. Yeah, he's telling Sulu to compensate for the change in gravity. So things are not looking good. The beeping has stopped. All right, so they got a steady orbit. But you see some sweating going on here.
Yeah.
I mean, another telltale sign.
And now McCoy's getting kind of perplexed because every indication is that the wounds weren't fatal, and there's no reason that they should be losing Tourmaline, but they are. And he's ultimately going to die. And it really has sort of McCoy in a quandary.
An interesting thing to note about this, and the fact that this is a Star Trek episode that deals with a viral outbreak, you think of how far in the future Star Trek is supposed to be set, but you realize how this virus is being transmitted, despite the fact that they're much more advanced technologically and medically. Viruses can still find a way to be easily transmittable between people, just like they are today. So you can see how this virus is starting out with one guy making a mistake and getting it, and then unknowingly passing it to two other guys who happen to touch him, and now it's going to spread throughout the ship until we can figure out how to stop it. But this very closely follows the way that viruses would transmit themselves today. So from a storytelling standpoint, it's pretty accurate. Whether or not the virus is possible in real life, we don't really know. But it's nice to see that even in the future, with medical technology, we're not going to be out of the woods when it comes to these types of contagious infectious diseases. And the sweat is getting worse.
Yeah, Sulu's actually mentioning now that and Sulu's just about to completely lose it. He wants to go down and do some fencing.
Yeah, the hell with flying the ship.
Yeah, boom. He's abandoning his post, and Riley's sort of still keeping it together. And there's Sulu.
And he's running while Spock's not looking. Mr. Spock is not looking.
Yeah. While
the cat's away. So now they're going to discuss a little bit about what happened at Termolan and...
Yeah, McCoy's basically going into the fact that there was there was nothing physically that should have caused him to die, and that it's the fact that he wanted to die.
Yeah, he
led to his death.
He went the Padme route. Lost the will to live, right? And
one of our many Star Wars, Star Trek comparisons.
Yeah,
well, that's another thing, I mean, it's funny that there's, fandom is often split between Star Wars and Star Trek. And, I probably personally lean towards Star Trek.
As do I.
But Star Wars is very, very much a part of my life. I think if you're our age, it's hard for it not to have been.
Oh, sure.
And in fact, right up until earlier this week, the wallpaper on my phone was the Death Star.
Oh, really? Yeah, well, my wallpaper on my phone has been the Enterprise from Star Trek V for a month or two now. I don't know if it's really going to change for a while, but I kind of like the way it looks on the screen. Oh, and here's Riley spouting a Irish brogue.
Yes, and Riley is played by Bruce Hyde. And I found an interesting little bit about him on the internet that might be of more interest to me and you than to our general audience. In Las Vegas for a period of time, there was the Star Trek Experience, which was really cool. It was at the old Hilton Hotel.
And we've been there.
Yeah, and it
more
was,
than once.
It was sort of a museum, and also it had two sort of interactive rides, sort of like Star Tours at Disney.
Yep.
And Bruce Hyde, who plays Riley, has an uncredited appearance in the Klingon Encounter.
Really?
Yes. So unfortunately, we can't go back and go to Vegas and watch him in it.
It's a shame.
And also, the character of Riley, not to spoil what happens to him, is going to pop up in one more episode, which is kind of neat in the sense that we have a guest star crew member who sort of appears again.
Huh. It's a shame that Star Trek Experience closed. I was really disappointed when that went down. We've been there together. What, twice we were there together?
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, we and the second and final time was
right before
a month before they closed.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about that is they closed at such a weird time because
the
reboot was getting ready to sort of hit. Feasibly, Star Trek Mania was going to be as high as it had been in quite a few years. And for whatever reason, the Hilton decided they didn't want to do business anymore.
Yeah.
So it was kind of surreal being there the couple weeks we were before they closed, because the place was slowly being dismantled.
It was.
A lot of there's Sulu with his buff physique.
Classic. And you know, and the still shot of him made it into the ending credit sequence many times. You know, going back to Vegas again, you know, some things that stand out in my memory about the last time we were there was that wall that they had of all of the goodbyes that people had written and it was actually very touching. People often, I find that when I mention that I'm a Star Trek fan, often people will kind of read into that you're, you know, you're a nerdy kind of dorky person, but when you reading some of the really heartfelt things that people had written on that wall,
the connections people had made through that place,
right, and how much the show, the characters and the different series affected their lives. You realize just how special not only this series but all of the other Star Trek series and movies really were to people. How these things really resonate.
Yeah. And actually, I think we can probably go through our archives and you know, post a picture up on the website of that
definitely.
wall. I know I'm pretty sure I got some pictures of it.
I have quite a few too. So we have we'll definitely be posting our pictures with the various monsters they had. So we're going to post those
as those episodes appear.
Yep. And we do have some other random. I have some great pictures of the Enterprise model, the large model that was hung from the ceiling. I have some great pictures of that. Even though they frowned on you taking pictures in there, we still snuck a bunch of pictures.
I do remember me. I have my picture, and actually, I think this was a picture that was taken on film on my disposable camera.
Wow, man!
Before I had gone digital, of me at Spock's burial tube.
Oh, really?
Nice. Actually, I think I have a digital version of that too that I got.
Very cool.
Yeah, there were a lot of really cool props on display, and that's when you sort of saw that a lot of the props were sort of just painted wood, which was really, really neat. And it's a shame to think that it was dismantled and sort of, you know, all that stuff went wherever it went. And there was talk for a while, and there's the Sulu on the bridge.
There was talk for a little while. They were going to reopen it downtown, and we were amped. We were like, "This is going to be great. We can go back and we'll see the new location." And then it just kind of fizzled out. And last I had read, some of the pieces had gone someplace, and the other pieces had gone someplace else. And you know, the rides had been sent. I think even overseas somewhere.
Yeah. So, I mean, they were really cool rides. The Borg.
See, here's an interesting. Now, you'd think Uhura would get it.
Yeah. Oh.
But she doesn't.
Yeah.
Because you know he was exposed skin. This is where Spock gets it, right? Isn't it?
But also that's the first moment in Trek where he uses the nerve pinch. I was on a podcast a couple months ago, the Idle Chatter podcast, a really good bunch of guys.
Nice.
And we were talking about sort of Captain Pike and how a lot of people, you know,
I listened to that one.
You know, saw the J.J. Abrams movies and might not have realized that Pike was an existing character.
Yep.
So at the time, I was asked if that was the first episode, the Menagerie Part 1 and 2, where Spock used the nerve pinch, and I did not know. And now I will say I will never forget that The Naked Time is the first episode where Spock used the nerve pinch. So next time that little bit of trivia is thrown down my way, I will be able to answer it.
You know, and what we really need to do too is look at the order in which they were recorded.
Oh, and see if it's truly,
and see where it falls in the production order.
Yeah.
So we can really figure out how early on Spock was given what could arguably be between that and the mind meld, which can arguably be his best ability. I think the neck pinch has saved them more times than we can possibly count. The mind meld has also been a great tool, but I think the neck pinch is his defining move.
So now we sort of have a beat the clock scenario there. The ship is basically, Riley has sort of disabled it, and they've got 19 minutes of power left, or of life support left. So and Scotty's basically realized that the only way to sort of get control of the engineering room is to access a panel that's behind the wall. So
while we're here in engineering, it's worth pointing out that this episode establishes yet another way to wrest control of the Enterprise. So you can do it from the bridge,
or via engineering.
And you can do it via engineering.
Yeah.
So now Riley has done it via engineering. So it'll happen again too. through engineering. But interesting way to keep track of all of the different ways that you can seize control of the Enterprise. If you ever find yourself in a position where you can do that.
Yeah.
All right. So, where are we? We're back in. We're back on the bridge again. We're trying to figure out how to cut off Riley, who's spewing nonsense.
Yeah, and he's calling himself Captain, which is kind of.
Well, he took over, so I guess he is.
And there's the bowling alley reference.
There it is. See,
they're gonna have a formal dance at the bowling alley.
So they still have formal dances, and there's a bowling alley somewhere on the ship.
And we are now down to 17 minutes, and we see things are getting dire.
And another convincing camera shake moment. Mm-hmm. They got really good at this.
Yeah.
Really, really good at that. And
as you notice at this point, the captain's chair no longer has the
the crane
the
neck
lamp.
You can't order a burger and fries anymore. So we need to figure out a way to get into engineering.
Yeah, and then at the same time, McCoy's also been tasked with finding a way to sort of inoculate or vaccinate and cure people that are suffering from this this virus.
Yeah, and if you look at this is another demonstration of medical technology in the Star Trek age. They seem to be able to isolate and come up with cures for things in a really rapid pace. Now today it takes months and years to come up with cures or vaccines, and here, thanks to, is it McCoy?
Well, I mean,
is it technology? Is it a combination of the two? I mean, do other ships in the fleet have doctors who are capable of curing everything they come across? I
would argue that McCoy is in the top percentile of doctors in Starfleet, much like Scotty is in the top percentile of engineers.
Yeah, so
Kirk, the Enterprise is pretty much the boss of the fleet.
Yeah, Kirk lucked out with this crew, but it seems that McCoy's his success rate with curing ailments and illnesses is very, very high. So I think we'll only see through the course of the series. I think there's maybe one thing that McCoy couldn't cure, and I think that comes up in season 3, I believe. But so Scotty's trying to reroute some controls. It's another really strange looking implement there that Spock is using.
Yeah, it almost looks like an old school, and I'm gonna probably date out a lot of people here, but an old label maker.
Remember where you would turn the dial and click
down.
The thing? Yeah, I remember those.
Before the Brother P-Touch.
Yeah, before the P-Touch revolution. Yeah. And there's this is the first mention of a bulkhead, too, by the way.
And Scotty's cutting through it with a phaser.
And more crewmen now are being affected, and they're painting, apparently doing some graffiti.
Now, if I was Spock here, I would have nerve pinched them all as I walked by.
Yeah, that probably would have been the prudent thing to do. Love mankind.
Yeah. And now we're going to see Yeoman Rand is being sort of
accosted by this other crewman.
He's told to stand aside. He complies, but then as soon as Spock's out of sight, he's back at it. And here, it's funny.
They're carving Texas into the wall.
Yeah, and Spock's gonna say, based at your speed, you're not at your current speed, you're not gonna have time to do what you need to do. Scotty pleads that in order to stay safe, that's the speed they have to go at, and Spock says, "Well, you're gonna have to disregard safety." And obviously, Scotty's more concerned with safety on the other side of the bulkhead and not of their exposed eyes. They're not wearing any kind of protective gear.
And they're pretty much, almost you think like a plasma cutter, if you will, and sparks are flying all over the walls, and he could have easily gotten sparks right in his eye.
Yeah. So
now we're examining Sulu, and they have a biopsy lab.
And it looks like the computer's doing some of the work here.
Yeah, computer does a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah, so McCoy's not, I guess it's a matter of knowing what kind of data to feed it, and then it will spit some stuff out. And here we also have a sort of the medical quarters have sort of look a lot different than they did even last episode.
Yeah, the walls are green.
Yeah, and then also even the sort of area, excuse me, that Sulu's on. It doesn't look like a traditional hospital bed with sheets on it.
No, not at all. And they have restraints.
Yeah, and there's also like that unicorn thing pointing down, which you can almost imagine might be some kind of sensor reader.
And we have Nurse Chapel is starting to suffer the effects.
Yeah, it almost seemed like she was going to let her hair down at that point. I guess one of the many wigs that she wore during the course of Star Trek between this and playing number 1.
You know, this series has some epic female wigs.
And male wigs.
And once we start to see Chekhov in his Davy Jones wig, but you know, Rand has probably what I think is one of those ridiculous wigs.
It's glorious. It's a glorious,
unbelievable
updo.
And everybody's getting annoyed now by Riley's incessant yammering.
Yeah. And Kirk does the right thing here, and he does apologize to Uhura for acting in sort of an uncaptain-like manner.
Yeah, the pressure's starting to get to everybody, I think. 12 minutes left, and you got some lunatic who's down in engineering, screwing up every effort you're making.
And now this is where things get kind of interesting.
Now, this is really great because, you're 4 episodes in, right? You're 4 episodes in, and Spock has gotten some attention from Uhura in Charlie X. Now he's getting attention from Nurse Chapel. Mm-hmm. And McCoy has already had a sort of a little romantic resurgence. Mm-hmm. But from here on out, it's all Kirk's territory, man. They got their stuff early on. Yeah. But Kirk is in charge of the ladies from here on out. But I think because the original intent was for Kirk and Yeoman Rand to have that relationship. Ongoing relationship before they changed it. That's why we're not seeing Kirk getting as much female attention. Mm-hmm.
And here we're getting a lot of exposition that really is that really explains Spock.
Yeah.
She points out that we've already known that he's...
Get the look on Spock's face.
He's part human, and that Vulcans suppress their emotions. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty important stuff.
The human mistress, but she's appealing to the human side of Spock. And, you see there's some conflict here with Spock. Yeah. He doesn't want to outright turn her away, but he knows that he can't give that love back to her because he's should be incapable, as a Vulcan, incapable of feeling those feelings.
Mm-hmm. And this is sort of a cool indicator of internally what Spock is dealing with throughout the entirety of the series.
Yeah,
it's the constant battle between the sort of human side of him, the emotion-driven part, and the logical part. And even if we don't see it in other episodes, it's planted here that it's something that he's constantly dealing with and constantly battling with, and it's part of who he is, which is a really, really huge character sort of trait.
Yeah, and here he's apologizing for the fact that he is the way he is. I think Nimoy does such a fantastic job with this character through all of the episodes and through all of the movies that he was in. He has mastered that character, that conflict between both sides. And actually, coming up in this episode, we're going to see a breakdown here.
Oh, yeah.
Where his human side is starting to win out with the help of the virus. So the virus here is affecting him differently than it affects the others, but it's bringing out the emotions that he worked so hard to suppress.
Yeah, and he's kind of keeping it together while he's in public, if you will, and there he's letting out he's trying his best to keep it together, and then.
Not a very easy thing for him to do, and we'll see other times in the series that he's going to be faced with the same type of an issue where he's got to try to battle back.
And now here is they've basically cut through.
Finished cutting Texas into the wall.
Yeah, Scotty's gonna quickly do what he needs to do.
And of course, it's cool enough for them to touch now.
Oh yeah,
no problem there. And they're going to go ahead and get their way into engineering.
Yeah, and Kirk gives a cool command here. He says, "Make sure
Don't
your phaser's on stun,
Mm-hmm.
and also don't shoot unless he's got a weapon."
Yep.
And Riley seems more concerned that there's not going to be a dance.
Yep. And now we're going to have a little bit of trouble here, where we've seen that Riley's actually shut down the entire engine, both engines rather.
Mm-hmm.
And
we're here's finally Spock's. He loses it.
And by the way, according to Shatner's memoirs on this, Nimoy actually ad-libbed these parts.
Oh.
Yeah, he wanted to do. He wanted to really play up the emotional aspect of this and sell that human side of himself to the audience. So he ad-libbed this whole part where he's kind of trying to convince himself.
He's chanting like a mantra, I'm an officer, okay. I'm an officer.
Yeah.
That's very cool. I didn't know that.
He does a really great job of selling it, I think.
Mm-hmm. I guess in terms of sort of memoirs, not surprisingly, this is George Takei's favorite episode of the series. While promoting his book in 1994, in a radio interview with Peter Holder on CJAD 800 AM in Montreal, he said, when asked what his favorite, if he had a favorite episode, he said, "Yes, without question, it's The Naked Time, where we see the swashbuckler in Sulu. That was great fun." So, if you're ever wondering what cast members have favorite episodes, we know that this is George Takei's favorite episode, and it's not hard to guess considering how much fun he gets to have.
And his part in this episode has a little more meat than it does in quite a few other episodes. He sometimes he really seems to get downplayed and not have a heck of a lot of lines, even though he's regarded as a major character.
Yeah.
Yet he's not really given a lot of opportunities to shine. This episode was one of his great opportunities to shine and show off his flair for that character.
And from a character standpoint, Sulu goes on to do great things in Starfleet.
Oh, absolutely.
He ends up captaining his own ship, the
Excelsior.
And his daughter or his daughter turns up in one of the movies. So we'll have a lot to talk about when we cover all that stuff as this podcast progresses.
Here's a new challenge. So we now know that it takes 30 minutes to start the Enterprise engines from cold state to ready to go.
To join the matter and the antimatter.
Right. You can't just throw them together, man.
It's not like a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup where you can instantly throw the chocolate and peanut butter together.
It works. No. This is not one of those situations.
And that was also an interesting line where Scotty had said, I can't change the laws of physics.
But Spock can, as we'll see. So now there's a theory.
Yeah.
There's a theory that how you could rapidly start up, but it's a 1 in 10,000 chance, huh? It's a 1 in 10,000 chance.
But at that point, it's a chance you got to take.
Yeah. It's a controlled matter antimatter implosion, huh?
And here's basically Sulu being cured.
And the doctor is successful.
And he last remembers being on the bridge. So
he has no memory of it. And give Nurse Chapel a shot, too, while you're at it, Doc.
And he realizes he's not wearing a shirt either. So you can imagine his confusion.
Yeah. Water's changed to a complex chain of molecules, huh? And it's passed through perspiration. But why didn't Uhura get it?
Well, you know what? Sulu was not glistening with sweat there.
Well, he was pretty glistening, man. He was pretty glistening. So, I don't know. I still think Uhura should have gotten it too, but that's okay. Not going to rewrite history here. So Spock is still lamenting.
But did Uhura touch him?
Yeah. Okay. Her hands were right on his chest.
And now Spock is broken up about the fact that he could never tell his human mother that he loved her.
An Earthwoman. So now we know for sure.
Yeah, that his mom was
that his
human.
mother was human. So huge huge bit of character background there.
Yeah.
Which will come into play many more times. Actually, partially defines the Spock character.
and
a nice slap by Kirk. Is that the first time Spock called him Jim, too?
Possibly. And he's basically...
Uh-oh. So, Kirk needs to convince Spock that he's got to help Mr. Scott create this explosion. So here's oh, what a look by Nimoy. Wow.
And for anybody who would, back then would wonder what a real fight between Kirk and Spock might look like, thankfully we will get to see that in a future episode.
We will. and he drew blood on Kirk too.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is one of those shows that people do things to Kirk that go unpunished, like this. Like Spock just pretty much bitch slapped him around, and now Kirk also has the disease.
Yeah, and how he fights it is really another great performance. Where you see that he knows as a captain he's got to do certain things before this madness completely overtakes him.
Yeah, playing it only the way Shatner could do it, man. Only Shatner could pull this off. Is another reason why I don't think Pike could have done these things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it would have worked as well had they not recast this. Had they not recast the captain with Shatner, and he wasn't the first choice either. Lloyd Bridges was ahead of him, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so the intermix formula now.
Yeah, Spock's, started doing some kind of, I guess, his computations in his...
And Kirk is professing his love for the Enterprise. Between time and antimatter. A flesh woman to touch. So we're seeing, some early evidence here of how much Kirk loves this ship.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of references to the Enterprise being, his love or his where his heart is, and why he can't have a relationship, a full-time relationship with a woman is because he's, in a relationship with the ship,
and he's fighting it.
Yeah, that sense of duty.
Yeah.
That Kirk has.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he can't fight it for long. He knows he can't fight it for long. A great job.
He's putting on a good face.
So with Spock and Scotty on the way to engineering to try to figure out now, Kirk is talking about we'll never lose the ship. Another recurring theme that will come back time and time again. And, so Kirk is heading back down towards the turbo lift here. To head back up to the bridge.
Yep.
We don't have a heck of a lot of time left.
Nope. Sinner
repent. So more red paint graffiti is going on here. But Sulu back at the helm. The quick recovery.
Yeah. I guess once you've been sort of, given the cure, and boom, McCoy, rips the shirt right at the shoulder.
And that's another interesting precedent too. Is normally hypos can go right through your clothes.
Yeah.
So was it for dramatic effect that he ripped the shirt, or was this just an early mechanic of the hypo where they hadn't decided that it can just go through clothes?
Mm-hmm. Or also, McCoy had mentioned that it transmitted via perspiration, so maybe he didn't want to leave anything to chance.
Or maybe they just didn't feel like having to repair or replace all those shirts that kept getting ripped every time a crewman needed a hypo. So here we go.
Yeah.
Hyperbolic course. Direction. Kirk is still recovering.
Yeah,
it's not a quick recovery, but
yeah, he was never as far gone as Sulu or O'Reilly, so
no.
That's the only good thing about it.
Yeah. So we have here we're going to see
this is a really cool
great scene.
Reach out and touch Yeoman Rand, but realizes that he cannot. It's almost like
no beach to walk on.
It's almost like sort of Spock denying his human side. as captain, he's sort of denying that part of himself.
And you wonder what kind of a direction. I mean, that was obviously one of the early scenarios where we see that Kirk desires his yeoman, and knowing that was the original intent for her character to be a major player in the show, and be Kirk's love interest. It's interesting that particular scene is interesting in that respect. It was a foreshadowing maybe of Kirk's inner conflict about he couldn't be with her. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, there's a very high pitched
as the ship is going down.
Yeah,
and more great performance by Shatner.
Mm-hmm. And there's something going on in space.
We don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Not sure. Was the implosion successful?
Mm-hmm. And then we learn an interesting little sort of fallout from the from what they did. And it's the first instance of
time travel.
What we could refer to as time travel in Star Trek, yes.
Yeah, and 3 minutes into the past, I believe.
No,
was it 3 days? 3 days.
3
Sorry,
days, yes.
Not 3 minutes, 3 days. So, but what's funny is that, they use different methods to travel through time in this show, and this one being the first one they've discovered, they never reused this.
No. Well, it's much cooler to slingshot around the moon.
Yeah, see, I don't know. I think this would be a really good a good way to time travel. It's not quite as dangerous as flying that close to the sun, right? I mean,
and that is one of the remastered effects that has been updated. But that's also a very cool, subtle, not obvious, unless you've watched and studied the original episode. And Kirk realizes that they're traveling backwards in time.
It's amazing how the computer's chronometer would be able to know that they're going back in time.
Well, just imagine the processing power. I mean, look at the processing power computers that we have nowadays have. Can you imagine what they'd be like?
But computerized clocks are just meant to tick forward. It doesn't do any reading of time and space where you're actually at when it's changing times. It's just going in a fixed interval forward. So how would the clock and the computer know to roll itself backwards as they were going back? It would have to be programmed to know when it's going back in time. I don't know. I suspend my disbelief, but
yeah. So I think there's
time.
Yeah, I think there's probably not going to be much debate here, but let's basically determine if The Naked Time is an essential Star Trek episode.
All right. Once again, I will defer to you for first word. 2 episodes in a row, I will defer to you, just in case we disagree again.
Yeah. I got to say, I said early in this episode that if this was the first aired episode of the series, they would have started out in a very good position. I think Spock, presented the way he is perfect. And gives us a lot of the information we need to know who Spock is as a character. I think that this is possibly the first episode I would recommend to somebody who's sitting down to watch the series from the beginning. So I would say very much that this is an essential episode.
All right. Very cool. Well, I'm happy to report that we don't disagree on this one for a lot of the same reasons. I think that you get really good character development in this episode. Not only that, but everyone is present. So you get to see a glimpse of every character, every major character, even the ones who sort of get sidelined. Yeoman Rand, of course, gets sidelined. And you don't see Nurse Chapel in every single episode. But it's great that you get to see everybody and get a little bit of a feel. So you get a feel for Kirk's feelings for Yeoman Rand. You get Nurse Chapel's feelings for Spock. You get some flavor out of Sulu. You get some of the engineering heroics from Scotty. You get some great conflict from Spock. You get Kirk's love for the Enterprise. I mean, you get a lot of great stuff in this episode. But it's also one of the Star Trek episodes that really has no discernible villain, and it takes place almost exclusively on the ship.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of things about this episode to like, and I definitely think that this qualifies as an essential episode, enjoyable from a lot of different angles. So we are in agreement.
Awesome. And so once again, thank you for sitting down and watching Star Trek with us.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Or listening as we discuss The Naked Time. And we will be back for another episode next week.
Take it easy, everybody. Thanks a lot.
No escape for you. You either leave this war bloodied or with my blood on your swords.